Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about analog synthesizers, mainly like the synthesizers that I own and why I like analog synthesizers so much. You want to see my first synthesizer? This is actually my first synthesizer. It's a Korg. Was it vocal bass? And yeah, it was my first little synthesizer, analog synthesizer that I had. And, after this thing, I fell in love with the sound of analog synthesizers. I think it was Toki Monster who said that like she can hear the difference between an analog synthesizer and a VST or like a computer generated synthesizer. And we're just gonna jump into that. I feel like her saying that actually really inspired me to, you know, look deeper into analog synthesizers and the sound that they can actually make. They're very interesting things, pieces of electronics, and you know they use oscillators in order to create noise, and they use voltage. There's, you know, a bunch of properties to every analog synthesizer that is unique to its own. Also, today I am going to fix this speaker. I don't know if you can see it. No. Huh. So this speaker, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's actually not level. Let me see if I can get this. It's sort of like leaning to the left. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna fix that speaker. There, you can see it now. It's just leaning a little bit. And what's going on is just like, if I take you over here. Ah! If I take you over here, look, it's just wobbly. It's just wobbly. Just really wobbly, and what's going on is the bolt is actually loose, and I've tightened it like a bunch of times, but I think that it's just like, I don't know. I need to fix it though. I kind of want to spray paint these. I want to spray paint these black at some point. That would be really awesome, and at least match in here, but who knows? Who knows when that's ever going to happen? I mean, everything else is sort of not really all that clean. So, I don't know. All right, let's get to it. Okay, so like, you know, 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, and it's done. But I know that was like 5 seconds for you guys. So like, let's get back to like, here, I'll show you it first. Have a look. Not as much wobble. Very little wobble. But yeah, I mean, that's the idea, is just to like get it to a point where it's like, oh, hey, it's not wobbling when I play music, okay? Yeah, back to analog synthesizers. Okay, let's just talk about the synthesizers that I have. I mean, there's analog synthesizers, there's VSTs, there's analog modeling synthesizers. It's easy to understand, and it's my understanding that the differences between like a VST, and a VST is just something that you have on your computer, and an analog synthesizer is that like everything in a VST is mathematically driven. Well, and it's not like analog synthesizers don't have, they are also mathematically driven. They're just differently mathematically driven, because it actually has a lot to do with like infinity. Because if you think of like a filter cutoff, there's like 1 to 10 or something like that. Like there's a number. It's numbered. What do you call it? Whatever. Let's jump into why I have my synthesizers. I can talk about what analog synthesizers are, but I mean, you should just look it up. I'm not going to do your homework for you. I think you can figure it out. Basically, why I like analog synthesizers is, and specifically like electrons, is just the sound and the noise. How do you even really describe it? Oh. Everything is different on an analog synthesizer. And I know people swear by this, and people are like, oh yeah, you know, like this is, everybody loves analog synthesizers, those are the best, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I think everything is different for every single person. I think that some people are better with VSTs. It depends on what type of music you're making. It really depends on a multitude of things of why you would want to use an analog synthesizer over a VST or an analog modeling synthesizer. For example, I have an analog modeling synthesizer. It's my Lesis Ion. And my Lesis Ion, the reason that I like that it's an analog modeling synthesizer is because it allows me to do a bunch of things to it in and change paths of like where filters are and like where EQs are, and like it gives me a dynamic that I can't necessarily currently get with what I'm doing on Electron. And basically what I'm doing on Electron is I build out a bunch of sound designs, and then I build a kit, and then these analog synthesizers are just great for like building tracks and building songs, and they have the capability of like storing songs and storing patterns, and that was really important when I was building the system, because like how do you go from one song to the next song? Like it has to be like MIDI synced, it has to be connected so that like each one of them is like talking with each other. So when I was looking for synthesizers for my system, because I knew that I wanted to do something live or like possibly on the keyboards or something like that, I was attracted to like the 808s and like the drum machines of the world, and like all those great button pushing machines that exist out there. And I was just looking for a solution that could sort of it could hold its own, like it's a box. These are boxes that can totally just, like the drum machine you don't even have to have all drums on it. You could play synths on it if you wanted to. You could play synthesizer noises. You could make different noises. Obviously, you don't have as much ability to affect the like filters. There's not as many like it's not really made for playing synthesized sort of sounds. And then like analog, the Analog 4, which is actually like my main synthesizer because I have two of them. Those are pretty much there to make synthesizer patty plush sort of ARP sounds, bass sounds, like the full gamut of like what you would want in a song. And that's why I really like them. I mean, they're a box and they can do everything. Like they're standalone. Like you don't need this huge system. I actually only had two when I first started. Like I only had I had the Analog 4 and I had the Analog Rhythm, and that was it. And I started that way. It was a great introduction to like, okay, so this is my drums and this is my keyboard. This is my, like what keeps the beat, what keeps the melody, like where are my pads, where are my my keys and like where are my arps, you know, like I had everything separated, because that's what's important, is like sort of compartmentalizing those things within a track. Yeah, they're great machines. I mean, like I can't even hype them enough. They're just so great. I just love their design. They just did such a good job. Yeah, made in Sweden. I guess those Swedes kind of know what they're doing. And then like the Octatrack is great too, because and it's only a sampler, but like some people classify it as like a synthesizer. I mean, we could loosely classify even the well, I guess no, that's really a sampler. But yeah, you know what? Octatrack really is not an analog synthesizer. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, you can do a lot of the things. You can do a lot of things to the sounds, but it doesn't work on the same premise as like the analog 4 and like the analog rhythm. You know, samplers are truly their own thing, you know, and yeah, it's really nice to have a sampler, only because like you can bring in things like splice, or like you can just make your own sample packs, or you could record your own things into the sampler, and it just allows you to just warp those things and bring like an organic sort of feel. Like that's if you've listened to my videos, you'll know that I'm all about organic and all that other stuff. I mean, like I know it's just like a word, but like I think it's also a way of living and a way of making music, and I guess that's what I strive for. And I know it's like uppity, and I know it's like, oh hey, analog synthesizers, you know, blah 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 blah. Those really expensive toys, you know, right? But I feel like producers these days, like they're about is like, oh hey, what's next VST, or like what VST is going to make my sound awesome. And what I found is that like just working with specific synthesizers for a long time, you get into this flow where you're actually just building tracks, and you don't have to worry about, oh, how am I going to affect this track, or how am I going to compress this track, or how am I going to make this track sound better than how it already sounds. And there's a point in the whole process where you should be thinking about those things, but it's certainly not when you're just, you know, getting started and you're trying to build tracks, and you're trying to create sound design, and you're trying to comprehend like how music goes together and composition and all that other stuff. You know, it's like, it's not just one thing, you know. And that's what, when you're picking a synthesizer, I think it's very important to think about those things. It's like, why am I using this product, or like why is this important to my flow of music production? Because if you don't think about those things beforehand, then you might end up buying a product and selling it. And not that I haven't done that. I've done that many times. I have bought many synthesizers and returned them or resold them, because it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. Not everything fits into your production. And like the Korg, it's kind of funny. Like it all comes back to this, because do I have any batteries in this? Nope, not at all. The Korg, I do use this occasionally. I try not to get like overwhelmed with how many synthesizers I have. I really try to keep it simple, and like I said, compartmentalized. My Ion, Alessis Ion. Like I was saying, it is analog modeling, and with the analog modeling, I had to add heat to it. So I got the electron heat, and it seems to like make the synthesizer sound just a little bit better. and it just adds like noise and like crunch and like just all those good little things that just make a track sound really good. Yeah, I think that's really. I really went on a tangent here. I know I can totally dig into synthesizers and like I could go really, really deep into like, oh, what's the difference between this? Oh, what's the difference between that? Oh, what's, you know, what, why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? But it, you know, we'll get to those points. I feel like I had to explain like what I was doing with the synthesizers that I currently have. I love analog synthesizers. And you'll learn like I used to DJ a little and that was fun. It just wasn't what I wanted to do or how I wanted to produce. I really felt like analog synthesizers just sounded better. They made my music sound better. It's been a process of picking these up. I mean, it's like been like 5 years, you know? Oh, why don't you buy the newest model? Oh yeah, hey, you know, when you have 15 grand, let me know, you know? But I love Electron. They still have support for these things. They still have support for their mono machines. They're crazy geniuses. Ah. Yeah, I really admire synthesizer builders. You know, it's just, how do you think up these things? I mean, this is genius. It's just super genius. And I guess on that note, I'm just gonna end it because I think I've been talking for like 15 minutes. All right. Peace. We're going off air, right? All right, later.